and welcome to the Dr. Toomer Talks show. Trying something a little bit different today. I'll get it smooth soon enough. Hi, I'm Dr. Catherine Toomer, family medicine community health physician and founder of Total Weight Care Institute, as well as the founder of Your Light Wellness and Weight Care. Because, um, as many of you know, I'm an advocate for GLP-1 access, and I have been unfortunately seeing a lot of people losing access. So as a result, I created a national group, telehealth group, to give people access to doctors around the country. So having said all that, if you want more information, if you are looking for a physician, you can find that information on my website at drtoomer.com. If you find this information helpful this evening, or any of my 300 videos now on YouTube, find any of those, share them, follow, subscribe, and help me reach my 5,000 goal by the end of the year. I'm at 1,200 now, and I'm just hoping to get up there because the more people that listen, the more people get out to, the more information that's widespread and can help more people. So hello, Denise. Hello, Cindy. Hello, Vinu. Um, hello, Patsy. Let me know where you're listening from. I see some new names today. So thank you for coming. So every month I do a Q&A. Pretty much I pretty much do a Q&A after every single episode, but once a month I dedicate an episode to anyone who has questions about health, wellness, and weight care. Now, I am a family physician. I have been practicing now for 26 years. And so really, there's a lot of patient care I've done, a lot of patient care that I know about. If I don't know, I will actually say I don't know. And I will find out because often when people ask me questions, I learn something myself. So, so if you have questions about anything health related, wellness related, we are a entity, human beings that are biopsychosocially driven. It is our biology is our biology, but our psychosocial part of our health and wellness is so important and so often overlooked. And this is why I talk a lot about stress. I talk a lot about mindfulness, and people throw that word around like mindfulness. What exactly does that mean? What mindfulness really means is engaging in activities that help calm you. And it can be anything. You can find that calm anywhere. You can find it in the smell of your soap when washing your hands, or the feel of the soap when you're washing your hands, the feeling of the sun on your face or your feet on grass, the sound of music, the sound of babies laughing, dancing, moving slowly, just swaying. There are so many places where you can find mindfulness. It doesn't have to be strict meditation. It doesn't have to be hypnotherapy. It doesn't have to be something so rigid and controlled and intentional. It's the intentional part is just paying attention to all your senses and to the things around you. And anytime you use your senses, you can use that as an opportunity for mindfulness. So see y'all saying hello to one another. I really love the fact that a community has grown around this, and we should make it more formal. I'll figure out some way of doing that. So if you have questions, you can put them in the comments. Now, I can't see questions coming from LinkedIn. So unfortunately, I can only see Facebook and YouTube questions at this time. And if no one has questions, then I'll just talk. So, and I'll just talk about a couple of questions that I always get. So, the first question I often get is, how do I reverse weight gain through the middle as we get older? And essentially what weight gain through the middle is an indication of our metabolic status changing. And there are very few things that can change our metabolic status back. And I always say the 4 M's. So if you have a pen and paper, you can write this down. So 4 M's are the ways to get your metabolic status back to where it should be so that your body functions in the way that it should, So it stops craving, it stops hunger, it stops your A1C from climbing, it stops belly fat from growing. So the 4 M's are: number one, meals. When you are when you eat a meal, it should be primarily protein. What you do with meals in order to help your metabolic status is control your carbohydrate. You control your how your body reacts to carbohydrates, because that's essentially what causes our fat production when you have a metabolic dysregulation. And that can be caused by menopause, stress, polycystic ovary syndrome, steroid use from as a form for treatment. And so all of those things can make your metabolic status go. And so eating protein primarily is the first M. Number two, the second M is mindfulness, what I just talked about. Essentially, what that does is brings down your cortisol. Cortisol is the culprit for a lot of what happens with our metabolic status and why we gain weight. And so bringing that down in any way, how you can, even if you don't feel like you're under stress, bringing your cortisol down will always improve your body's reaction to food. It will improve your body, what your body does with food. So it stops trying to make fat and will make fuel instead. The third M is muscle. Muscle, 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 muscle. Muscle is our metabolic powerhouse. The more muscle you have, the better your metabolic status is. And the more muscle you have determines whether you need the fourth M, and that's medication. Now, again, much of our metabolic status is because of our genetics hitting some environmental trigger. And so sometimes we can overcome it with lifestyle and muscle and food, but many, many times we cannot. And even if we can overcome it, it's a struggle. And sometimes using medication helps with that and makes it so much easier. And for people who say using medication is the easy way out, all I say is wash your clothes in a river instead of in a washing machine. If being easy, if doing something in the easy way is so terrible. And so those are the 4 M's. And the medications I'm talking about is GLP-1 medications primarily, because they are the best. There are others that help with regulating blood sugar. And they also, and the reason that's so important is because anytime you have metabolic dysregulation, it causes the same complications as if you have diabetes. So that means blindness, dementia, heart disease, nerve damage. And so preventing all of that is extremely important. And Denise, I do see your question and I'm going to answer it in just a moment. So those are the 4 M's: meals, mindfulness, muscle, medication. And so in getting your metabolic status under control. And if you have any more questions later, you can always write to me at help@drtoomer.com. That's DRTOOMER.com. Or you can go to my website and also set up a strategy and plan consultation, where I will do a full assessment, including labs, and provide medication, at least initially, to get you started. Because many of the processes that it takes to get medication, many physicians who take insurance just simply do not have the time. And so I get the process started for them. And then you can go back to your regular doctor if you want, or you can stay with me. Either way, it's good. So before I continue, I see a question, but I also am going to say hello to Sora Pope. How are you? So, hi, Marcia. I think I said before, hi, Elizabeth. So Denise asks, Dr. Toomer, how long do you recommend holding your GLP-1 for a colonoscopy? Number one, I would say whatever your physician says. So whoever's doing the colonoscopy will tell you. Most of them say 2 weeks, just skip a dose. If you skip one dose, that means you go 2 weeks without medication. Although the first week is really covered. So personally, it depends on how much constipation you have on the medication. If you have severe constipation, then the longer you're off the medication, the better. The reason that's so important is because having really good prep, clear, clean colon is life-saving. What happens when you don't have a really good colon prep? things can be missed because you have stool that's kind of overcoming it. And Wanda, I will answer your question in just a moment. And so what happens for a colonoscopy to be extremely effective and to be extremely protective, you want to completely clear out your colon. So you want to make sure that what comes out is clear. It doesn't have to be like clear, but you want to be able to see through whatever that comes out. You should be able to see the bottom of the toilet. If you can't, then you're not clean enough. And so really it depends. If you're someone who has daily bowel movements and don't have a problem, skipping one dose of your medication should probably be enough. If you're someone who has severe constipation, you may need to miss 2 to 3 doses. And to be honest, it's better to gain weight because that weight you can always lose again if you're on it for weight management. If you're on it for blood sugar, again, you can get your blood sugars under control again, and you can also control them with your meals. But you miss something in a colonoscopy and it can kill you. So you just kind of weigh the risk. So it's better to have a completely clear and good prep for a colonoscopy. And I know it's a kind of depends kind of answer, but talking to whoever your physician is who's doing the colonoscopy, they will give you recommendations. But if you know you have constipation, I would extend it by a week because you want to make sure you're completely cleaned out, because it's a waste of your time and a waste of their time if you're not completely prepared properly. So Wanda asks, what is a GLP-1? What a GLP-1 is a class of medication that was developed to help treat diabetes. They first came on the market in 2005, and they are injectable medications that are not insulin that help with controlling diabetes. What we have found is that in the course of treating diabetes, it also afforded weight loss. And the reason it affords weight loss is because obesity, weight gain, much of the overweight that we see is on the same continuum as diabetes. The reason we gain weight very easily from very little food is because of something called insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is on the same continuum as diabetes. So what GLP-1s are many of the medicines you're probably hearing about in the news. Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, Mounjaro, Trulicity is another one, Victoza is another. Saxenda is the weight loss version of Victoza, same medication. Wegovy is the weight management version of Ozempic, same medication, semaglutide. And Zepbound is the same medication as Mounjaro or tirzepatide. They are all, and so those are GLP-1 medications. It's just a class. It's kind of like saying hypertensive medications, or more specifically, you could say ACE inhibitors, for example, is a class of medications. Analgesics is a class of medications, and those are things that help. I hear that those are not good for you. No, they're absolutely life-saving. So this is what's happened. I've been actually on a GLP-1 for 14 years. I've been prescribing them for 15 years. We've been using them for 20 years. So a lot of the information that people are getting is clickbait. And it's clickbait sensationalization to prevent, essentially to get writers paid. So, and I'm going to go on, step on my soapbox for a minute here. So what happened when newspapers started losing circulation? Everything went digital. And when everything went digital, then that meant all articles were written for online. The way writers got paid then was by how many people read their articles. And so the number of people who read their articles was directly related to the sensationalism of the article's heading or the title. And so when weight loss has always been a hot topic, but GLP-1s became an even hotter topic when Ozempic came out. But nobody wants to hear the good stuff. Nobody clicks on the good things. No one clicks on the titles that say GLP-1s save you from heart disease when you have insulin resistance. GLP-1s are far safer than obesity in your lifespan. GLP-1s prevent blindness in people who are at risk of losing their sight from high blood sugars. Those titles don't get clicked on. It's the GLP-1s cause blindness in a so rare condition that I've never seen it in 26 years. And the only people who have seen it are probably the ophthalmologists, just because that's who we send them to. But, or GLP-1s cause stomach paralysis. Stomach paralysis, the number one cause of stomach paralysis is diabetes. These medications treat diabetes. So we were seeing stomach paralysis before GLP-1 medications came out. So we saw blindness, we saw gastroparesis, we saw lots of complications from diabetes that are being now saying that's because of the medicine. The other thing that has happened is that these medications have been adopted by diet culture. We have always seen maladaptive behavior in diet culture. Any medication that is abused and misused will cause problems. And when you use and abuse GLP-1s, it causes problems. Unfortunately, the same people who have the problems are the same people who were trying to lose weight in very dangerous ways even before. So no, they are very good for you. They are life-saving, especially because high blood sugar, insulin resistance, prediabetes, and diabetes will kill far faster than the medication complications will. And in 26 years, I've never had a complication. The only time I've had one was because someone misused the medication. They went right to the highest dose right away from the first dose, and they got sick from it. So I hope that answers your question. And read the National Institute of Health literature instead of the headlines. News articles have never been good sources of information, especially medical information. They're not accurate and they're not balanced. Venu says, I can truly say GLP-1 helped me get my A1C from 12.6 to 5.2. I'm so grateful. Wow, that is amazing. Yeah, they helped. Mine went from 9 to 5.3. The other thing that a GLP-1 has done for me is it preserved my ejection fraction from my congestive heart failure. So one of the things that GLP-1s do, and this is the most common thing I see in patients who take GLP-1s, is that they drop their blood pressure medicine. People who have high blood pressure often get treated. It often come off their medicine because GLP-1 medications are so beneficial to the cardiovascular system that as their blood pressure drops, they can drop their medication. So when you have a heart condition and that your heart is being strained, reducing the work that your heart has to do is helpful. GLP-1s help reduce the amount of work a heart has to do. So if you already have heart disease, it helps. If you don't have heart disease, it helps prevent it. So it is dependent on the behavior of the person using it and how well they're monitored and how well it's prescribed to them and what it's prescribed for. The biggest issue I see with GLP-1s is that people won't allow us to adjust their dose according to what's best for them. They enjoy the weight loss. They won't allow it. So if there's things that are happening, like they're getting dehydrated, their kidneys aren't functioning properly, you want them to pull back because you don't want someone to be completely appetite suppressed. You want them to eat. You want them to drink water. You want them to still consume calories, but they like the weight loss. And so it's really, really hard to get people to listen, take them off. In situations like that, I simply stop prescribing. However, it's so much easier to get medications now online that we're not the gatekeepers anymore. So there's that. Patsy asks, where is your office located and are you accepting new patients for primary care? Now, I am not a primary care doctor. I mean, I don't practice as a primary care doctor. I am virtual and I am everywhere because I screen and give plans. And depending on where you live, I can also treat. Now, because I am a trained primary care physician, I don't ignore anything. I may not treat what I find, but I will look for it. And so in doing my assessments, I always find out what is biologically going on, what is psychologically going on, what's socially going on, and come up with a plan that helps get you healthy. Now, I do primarily focus on weight management because the reason we gain weight is often the reason that we have health issues. And so by addressing those health issues, it helps with weight loss. So I don't function as primary care, but I do assessments to help you, guide you to better health. And if you want to take it back to your primary care physician, you can. But I do treat depending on what I find, or I refer, because I can't turn it off. I'm primary care, and once like they say, you can take the girl out of primary care, but you can't take the primary care out of the girl. So I still function like one. Do you believe that there is a cure for diabetes? There is no cure. However, there is complete control. There is the reason there's no cure for diabetes is because diabetes is a hormonal disease caused by what your pancreas does and what your cell surfaces do. Now, there are stem cell research in the works that's helping to create reversal of many types of diseases, including diabetes. But however, diabetes can't be cured, but it can be controlled, if that makes sense. You can live your life as if you don't have diabetes, or you live your life without medication to control your diabetes. But once you have diabetes, you always have it. It just may not present itself and cause you problems based on your behavior and based on things that have changed in your life. So if you're someone who was becoming diabetic because you were in a chronic high situation and your cortisol levels were so high, it was driving up your A1C and causing your blood sugars to be out of control, and then you remove yourself from that stressful situation and that all goes away, well, then that is completely controlled diabetes. However, if you ever go back into a stressful situation, that diabetes will come right back, or that lack of control will come right back. So, but yes, you can control diabetes down to the point where it's undetectable, but it's still there. I went many years without medication. I was on insulin and 2 oral medications, metformin and one other. Can't remember what it was at the time. This was before the days of Jardiance and Farxiga. And I was on 3 medications, including insulin, and worked tirelessly, really hard, actually. I white knuckled this down to the bare bones and managed to lose some weight. And I was able to go on without medication for a few years. But then I started hitting perimenopause. And perimenopause and menopause are metabolic conditions as well. And so my metabolic dysregulation, so my perimenopause met my genetics that also had met my diabetes, and I had to go back on medication. And so, and now I am, but I am well controlled. So looking at my blood work, if you looked at my blood work and you didn't know I was on medication, you'd say she's not diabetic, but I actually am. Because if I went off medicine, all that blood work would go out the window. Laura asks, can eating carnivore long-term increase insulin resistance? Meaning eating lots of meat? No. In fact, quite the opposite. But eating carnivore long-term can cause cholesterol issues. And also depends on how clean the meat is, because nowadays we have so many hormones in our meat and antibiotics that cause all sorts of issues, that eating a lot of anything is not healthy. Even eating lots and lots of vegetables, like even raw vegetables, you still need to balance it out with something else. Our body needs the 3 macronutrients. It needs our carbohydrates to break down to glucose. It needs our protein to break down to amino acids, and it needs our fat to break down to fatty acids. All three of those things plus water goes into a chemical reaction that produces energy in our body. And so without one of them, the others are going to suffer. Now, the difference between the protein, however, does not have to come from meat. The protein can come from plants as well. So as long as there's protein, an adequate protein, fat, and carbohydrates in your diet, plus water, your body will produce the energy that it needs. However, the problem we run into is that when one of or more of those items can't get into the cell for the cell to make that energy, for part of that energy reaction. And usually it's carbohydrates that can't get into the cell because of insulin resistance. And when that happens, instead of it going into the cell for energy, it goes to get stored as fat. And that's why those of us with insulin resistance or who are on the metabolic continuum or dysregulatory continuum make fat very, very easy. And this isn't something that happened by accident. This was actually an evolutionary thing. There were many, many times in human history where being able to make fat from very few calories was very beneficial. Those were the people who survived because food was not always abundant. And so those who could make fat from little food lived, and those who couldn't starved. And there are lots of times in human history with human migration, with human transportation, otherwise known as the Middle Passage for our history, but there's others that it was beneficial being able to. And so when you then now in modern times have access to food without there being a shortage, then guess what happens? We start becoming overweight and we start having obesity. Which plants provide protein? The best ones, the super proteins, are beans. The smaller, the better. So lentil beans are the most protein packed of anything. There are, and navy beans, black beans, red beans. When you start getting into the bigger beans, they're more starchy. However, one of the biggest misconceptions about beans is that they're high in carbohydrates. The carbohydrates in small beans is mostly in the form of fiber. Our body cannot digest that. And so it actually helps in our digestion by helping with our bowel movements, by adding bulk to our bowel movements. So beans are a superfood. The other way you get protein from plants is that you combine certain grains with certain greens. Now, I can't remember all of them, but sometimes when you combine a leafy green with rice for brown rice, the combination is that the brown rice has certain parts of the protein, the leafy green has other parts of the protein, and when you combine them, you get the complete protein. And that is, but you would have to look that up. There's long lists of how you can combine foods to make protein outside of meat. Beans are great, though. If you like beans, if you don't like beans, figure out a way of liking beans. They're really good for you. Really good. Oh, I'm glad you find it interesting. Any other questions? We're hitting on the 30-minute mark, so I try to keep this under 30 minutes, but I don't mind if there are more questions coming. No? Okay. Well, if you think of something later, again, you can write to me at help@drtoomer.com, or you can write comments after the video. Any of you who've sent comments after videos know that I do respond to them. And so if you have questions and you think of things then, and then also you can take your questions to your physicians as well when you're able to speak to them. But if not, that's what I'm here for. So, and if you're, like I said, if you found this helpful and you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go to youtube.com/@drtoomer and subscribe. And you'll always get notified when I post another video, which is usually about 2 to 3 times a week for shorts, and then the long video once a week. Is fasting good for you? It depends on how you do it. So fasting, and there's a fine line between fasting and starvation and so you've got to do it with intention and with consistency and for a reason. Usually fasting to lose weight does not work really well, and mainly because it's too easy to slip over into starvation, if that's the case. And yes, you can lose weight when you starve, but it screws up your metabolism. And then when you try, you can't maintain it. So when you start eating food again, your brain says, I'm not going to let you starve again. And it becomes even more efficient in making fat from food. Now, when you fast for religious reasons, it does create, your body creates ketones, and ketones does sharpen your brain. So often people may fast for religious purposes, for studying purposes, and that is different. Now, everybody's different, and sometimes with fasting, your insulin levels can change, but it's almost impossible to know which fasting works best for which person. So, fasting is not a natural way of eating, and I'm more of a fan of eating intuitively and eating naturally. So if you just eat with in moderation, you eat with focusing on protein, primarily plant-based diet, and your body will respond the way it responds. And if it doesn't respond, maybe that because there's an underlying condition that needs to be treated. Hypothyroidism is a common one I see. Insulin resistance is even more common because A1C does not always reflect insulin resistance, but insulin levels usually will. Patsy says, I'm 15 pounds overweight and have been borderline diabetic for over 20 years. Will losing 15 pounds help, or will I always be borderline? It's the other way around. If you treat your borderline diabetes, your weight will go away. The reason you're 15 pounds overweight is because you're pre-diabetic. You're not pre-diabetic because you're 15 pounds overweight. And I'm going to say that again. You are 15 pounds overweight because you are pre-diabetic. You are not pre-diabetic because you are 15 pounds overweight. It's the dysregulation that started first that caused your weight gain. So acting like a diabetic, eating like a diabetic, exercising like a diabetic will help. And if none of that helps, then the other is to treat it. And this is why GLP-1 medications work so well. And it doesn't have to be large amounts of weight loss. It can be small amounts. You can use little doses. And this is something else. When you have very little weight to lose and you need to just regulate your metabolic status, what happens during glucose dysregulation is that your muscles are constantly fighting against it to try and get fuel, and your body constantly trying to make fat. So when you treat it, what happens is that suddenly your muscles stop fighting against the process. So all of the muscle work you do becomes far more efficient. Muscle work will determine whether you need to stay on medication. Often what it will do is just kind of give you a break to get over the hump, and then you can kick in with muscle work, and that muscle work then becomes your medicine, so to speak. It becomes the driver. And so when you use medication, muscle will determine what happens next. And the muscle you build now will determine your independence later. Whether you're able to walk around, whether you're able to clean yourself, whether you're able to wipe yourself, brush your own teeth, comb your own hair, is largely dependent on the muscle you build right now. And it doesn't matter how old you are, whatever you do, it's always going to help. But the earlier you start, the better. You said just gained 15 pounds in the past 2 years, more than likely because you're going into menopause or your stress levels changed. Usually when you've kind of stayed steady, and you haven't changed anything else, and all of a sudden your weight starts to climb, it's because of your drop in estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, which leads to cortisol dominance, and cortisol dominance pushes you into insulin resistance, and insulin resistance causes weight gain. That is why we gain weight as we get older. It's not because our metabolism slows down, which it does, but it slows down mainly because our muscles don't get the fuel it needs because it's fighting now against the metabolic condition. So he's like, okay, thank you. Yeah. And this is something that unfortunately is not largely discussed, and it's becoming more widely known. It's becoming more widely understood. I mean, it's just like how, 15 years ago, we did not call obesity a disease, even though those of us who were treating it knew it was a disease. But it took a while for the medical establishment to catch on. It's going to be the same way with women as we go into menopause, recognizing menopause as a metabolic condition so that it's treated like a metabolic condition and not just like a hormonal condition, because metabolic conditions and hormonal conditions are tied together. They cannot be separated. Lynn said, I've just joined. How do we continue building muscle that will help us as we age? Resistance training, some type of either resistance or basically muscle building. So one of the things that I see works really, really well on many different levels is Pilates. Unfortunately, Pilates, in the way it is in the United States, is a very expensive endeavor. So using YouTube videos is very helpful if you don't want to spend a whole lot of money on memberships. The other is really 3 exercises, and depending on your mobility and how, if you don't have any back issues or knee issues, squats, planks, push-ups. If you can do squats, planks, and push-ups, you can build muscle from here all the way down. And you can go on YouTube. There's lots of different videos that will help show you how to do it properly. And you start low and go slow. If you go too fast into something, you're going to injure yourself. And so it's important to know proper form, and it's important to understand your limitations, and so that you don't hurt yourself. But building muscle is absolutely imperative. Now, if you find that you're working on, you're trying to build muscle, and you find that your muscles just not responding like the way you expect, it means that your muscles are probably fighting against another process. So if you're going into menopause, you have to treat something, either hormone replacement or metabolic corrector like a GLP-1, and often both. And usually if you use both, you can use the lowest dose possible. And then build muscle and see what happens. But often it's also difficult because in women, as we get older, our testosterone drops. Our testosterone is what helps us maintain and build and maintain muscle. So as it drops, we often have difficulty. And so sometimes we need testosterone replacement. And usually the only way people get testosterone is if they complain about libido issues. When you start completely losing interest in sexual activities, then we'll jump on testosterone. But that also means your muscles are suffering. So, you don't have to wait till that happens before you treat that as well. And it's not saying that menopause is a pathology. However, we do know that untreated menopause causes increased dementia and increased heart disease. And guess what also causes increased dementia and increased heart disease? Diabetes, metabolic disease. And so that's why it just so happens, brain fog. If you list all the symptoms of metabolic conditions, of diabetes, brain fog, fatigue, irritability, insomnia, heart disease, dementia, achiness, pains, dry skin, nerve endings that feel raw. Those are all the exact same symptoms of menopause and the exact same symptoms of metabolic dysregulation. And it's not a coincidence that they're the same. Okay. If no more questions, like I said, if you think of anything else, you can write to me at help@drtoomer.com, or you can just ask a question underneath the video but it will be seen. So if you want to be private, you can always just write to me. All right. Well, thank you. And again, welcome to the Dr. Toomer Talk Show. This was absolutely great. And just know that after every single Tuesday talk, there's a Q&A. So you don't have to wait until the monthly Q&A to come and ask me questions. You can ask them at the end of any of the videos I do each Tuesday live at 6 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube, LinkedIn, and on Facebook. Good night.